Hello, Venomfangx. I looked over in Keen Vision, and apparently you have some videos over on my website. So I figured I'd attempt to answer your questions. You're going to have to move the camera to where the voice can go right into the camera. This is, I guess, try to point it right at the screen so they can see and hear Venomfangx talk, and then turn it to me whenever I attempt to answer his questions. Alright, here we go.
To them I say, there is a God. And now it's my word against theirs. So now it's our job to show each other evidence to support our claims. Whoever has the most compelling evidence likely has the stronger argument. Now, what evidence would you show me to prove the non-existence of anything? I mean, it's very difficult to show evidence of the non-existence of something. So the burden of proof is actually on the person who asserts that something does exist, and to claim something does not exist is simply to ignore all the evidence that something does exist. So you might say, well, what evidence is there that God does exist? Well, I happen to have plenty of evidence.
Bring it back over here. Okay, first of all, you say that atheists say there is no God and that you claim that there is, and that you have evidence that God exists. There is no one on the planet, Venomfangx, that has evidence of a God existing, and you'll find no atheist who can prove a negative. There's absolutely no atheist, not even one of the greatest atheists themselves, which is me. Richard Dawkins, Sam Harris, none of these guys are going to prove to you that Santa Claus doesn't exist, because if something doesn't exist, then there will be no evidence around to show either way. And I think that that's a pretty silly-ass question. What atheist, at least myself, there are some atheists out there who are arrogant enough to make the stupid claim that they can prove that God doesn't exist. I'm not one of them. I lack a belief in deities because I see no evidence to entertain any. I am more than willing at any time to see any evidence that you claim to provide. One of the things that you do on a repeated basis is you claim that you know and you have evidence, and you say this over and over in your videos, but you never have actually provided, out of all the hundreds of videos you've ever made, Venomfangx, that there is a God. You just say it a lot. So it's cool. I do want to say something before we go into this next ordeal of questions. I heard that you got kicked off of YouTube, but I'm glad to see you back. I'm glad that you were allowed to come back and say what you have to say. All right, next questions.
I mean, quite frankly, I've got plenty of evidence. Atheists just seem to have selective hearing or selective vision, it seems. You know, I'd ask any atheist, do you know everything? Well, let's be modest and say maybe you know half of everything. Is it possible that God exists in the half that you don't know? Because in order for you to claim that there is no God, that means you know that there is no God, which would make you all-knowing, and that would make you God anyway, so that's self-refuting. The fact is, you do not know everything. Therefore, the fact that you do not know God does not exclude the possibility of his existence, and certainly you must take into account the fact that there are many people who claim to know him. I happen to be one of those people.
Alright, first of all, you don't know God. What you have is a book that was written by a bunch of primitive goat herders that claims that some invisible man talked to people and gave people diseases and hemorrhoids whenever he wasn't in a good mood. You do not know God. You have never heard the voice of God. You've never even had coffee with the guy. So I don't know why you continue to claim that. What you have is a strong belief system. You strongly believe, because you've been raised up in Christianity, that this thing exists. I can find many Muslims out there who will tell me that they know that Allah exists, that they believe so strongly and stuff that emotionally they can feel God talk to them and see God work in their life. And you'll find pagans and, you know, people of all different religions who feel the same way, Hindus, Greeks, Romans, you name it. Now, you asked, does atheists know everything? Personally, I'm going to speak for myself here. I believe when it comes to the universe, I don't even have a minute understanding of what's going on. I don't. I've never even been outside of the atmosphere of Earth. I don't have a great understanding of all the universe. I'm constantly learning and growing as I go along. But does this mean because I lack knowledge in many, many different fields and areas that there's a possibility that there's a God? If I were to say yes, then I would also have to say there's a possibility that Allah exists. There's a possibility that Santa Claus may exist. Hell, I might even be wrong about the tooth fairy, and my mother and father may have been completely right. And then I'm fucked either way. The way I see it, when it comes down to it, we're playing Russian roulette, aren't we? You figured out that this is what you want to believe in, and everybody's got a foundation of what they're set up on. Well, until I see evidence for there being a God, I am not going to claim to have the knowledge of something if I don't have it. Does that make sense? If I don't know of it, or I've never seen it or experienced it, I cannot lie to the viewers and say, oh yes, there's a possibility of something, because then that would be lacking in statement. All right, let's see your next question.
The next one is, can an all-powerful God create a rock too heavy for him to lift? Now, I don't usually answer questions with questions, but can an invisible man be seen? Well, if he can be seen, then he's not invisible, and the question itself is self-refuting. You see, if God is all-powerful, that means there is nothing that is too heavy for him to lift. So your question is actually a contradiction of terms, and is not really a problem with God. What they're trying to do is this. They're trying to say, well, if God cannot create a rock too heavy for him to lift, then he is not all-powerful. Well, that's not true, because all-powerful means there is nothing physical that is too heavy for him. It's the same as saying, well, if an invisible man cannot be seen, then he's not invisible. That clearly does not make sense. So then what they're trying to show you is, well, then that just means there's something God cannot do. God cannot create a rock too heavy for him to lift. Well, who said that God can do everything? Certainly not I. God cannot lie. God cannot steal. God cannot do something that is illogical. God cannot create a circular triangle. God cannot send you to hell for no reason. You see, God is a God of logic and morality, and God cannot defy his nature or the laws of non-contradiction. So, God cannot do something that does not make sense, and you wouldn't want a God like that, because then God could do something to you that does not make sense, and that would suck. So the God that the atheist is appealing to here is a God of nonsense, which is exactly why they don't believe in God, because their concept of God is nonsense. The real and living God is true, and he is logical.
You say that God would never create something larger or greater than itself, or let's go with the rock bullshit. You say God can't make a rock that is too yada yada yada, because why? Because it would be nonsense for God to create something heavier than he can carry. I don't understand that, because human beings every single day create things that are reasonable and logical that are way heavier than what they can carry. Would you agree, Bon?
I would agree.
We create many things. Hell, I've got a TV that's so big I can't carry it on my own. But it's a very logical and reasonable system that I watch and entertain myself on, especially even right now while we're sitting here recording this video. That was a cute little clever way of trying to get yourself around it and everything, but I would like to know this. I never even bother asking the stupid rock question because I think it's immature and it's so old and worn out. My question would be to you, Venomfangx, is can God kill himself? If God is immortal and he's omniscient and all-powerful, then he should be able to kill himself. However, if he did kill himself, then he couldn't be claimed as the attribute of immortality. So what can you do with that? Next. How much time we got, by the way?
The next one would be, who created God? The answer is no one. God always existed. It's as simple as this. Either everything came from nothing, or something always existed. Since nothing can only make nothing, therefore something always existed, and that, dear friends, is God.
We're almost at 10 minutes.
All right. Well, I'll sit here and, okay, so he claims that God came from nothing, that God always was and everything like that, even before the creation of the universe, before all this and everything. I think we're going to have to go to a second part on this Venomfangx because I can't do over 10-minute videos.